All right, and good day to everyone out there. My name is Oliver Blue, and I am your temporary guide. I am your coach, your friend. I am your brother. I am you. Welcome again to this session of a, a Course in Miracles. And today we're going to begin a new and a fresh series of workbook lessons starting today with 151. We are on day 151 and we have been on this journey. Um, and we're approaching the halfway mark of an entire year of dedicating ourselves to completing these workbook lessons out of A Course in Miracles. It's 365 of them, a whole year. And if you are still here listening, if you're still in the process of this uh, project of renewing our minds, mind training, thought reversal, transformation, transfiguration, resurrection, we bundle all of those ideas into one and say we are about the truth that is true always. We are about the full embracement of reality and what that means. We are about being the best expression of who we really are in this time, in this era, in 2022. The world needs to know, to experience, to have hope that there is a creator and a creation that can not only be known, but that can be experienced and that can be expressed. And so we are on this crusade, we're on this journey of transformation. We're on this journey of transfiguration. We are on this journey of coming to know our true self and being the expression of that in this world. And so thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining in here with me today. And also like to acknowledge that these workbook lessons are being presented. They are being sponsored by Truly Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that was co-founded by myself and my lovely wife, Yolanda. And we are fully and completely dedicated to the sharing of what we call advanced spirituality for the purpose of bringing light and immortality to life to all humanity. And so we thank you for being here. And today, as we move into, again, this next 20 lessons, which will introduce 20 new ideas to what we've already learned and what we've already practiced. Today's idea introduces somewhat of a subject we have not dealt with. And but we're going to look into it today and find out what it is sharing with us. Today's idea says that all things are echoes. All things are but echoes. And what is an echo? Echo is somewhat not the original, but somewhat of a faint, somewhat of a reduced expression. It says all thing is but a somewhat of a echo, an echo generally is a repeat of the original. But in that repeat, it is not as strong in its expression. So here it's saying that all things, and that excludes nothing. That means all things that are seen and unseen, all things that are felt, all things that are smelled, all things that are heard, all things that are tasted. Here it says all things, so it eliminates no thing. So from a standpoint of our ability to relate to this physical world through our 5 physical senses, it includes that. All things include our ability as spiritual beings to engage in spirituality, to engage in that which is not seen, to engage all of our mental or unseen capacities, such as our memory, our ability to perceive, our capacity to imagine, our intuitive faculty. We're talking about every dimension, every avenue, every stream of life that we can connect with. That's what we mean when we say all. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is excluded. And so it says all things are echoes. Notice now, all things are echoes. That means that all things, all things have the capacity to communicate, has the capacity to express, if we will but open ourselves up to all of that which is being communicated with us through the different means, through the different ways, through the different sources. It says all things are echoes of the voice for God. Notice now, it says all things are echoes of the voice of God, or the voice for God. So here we're learning today that there is a voice that is for God. Voices are used to communicate. So here it's telling us that there is a communication that is for God, or it expresses what God is, what God represents, or what the whole idea of creation is. There's a voice, and that voice is as an extension of the source that it comes from, or the communication. So there's an effort here, what it's saying, in all things to communicate to humanity, to communicate to us what the purposes are, what God's plan is, what God's purpose is. There's a voice. There's a untainted reality. There is a purity. There is a knowledge. There is a wisdom that is available to humanity, that comes through all things, that speaks through all things. It says it echoes. It says all things are echoes of a voice for God. So that means that every dimension of life is constantly communicating the purposes of God, communicating to God's creation. There's an exchange, there's a interaction between God and his creation that is going on constantly. There is a oneness between God and his creation, and God's one creation, we know from what we've learned, is humanity. And so when we are at a place where we are advancing our awareness and we're expanding our consciousness, here this lesson is going to tell us and talk about is pure communication between creator and creation that goes on all the time. Wow. So today's idea again is all things are echoes of the voice for God. And it starts out by saying no one can judge on partial evidence. What is judgment? Judgment is rendering an opinion or rendering I looked this up earlier. Let me see what it says. It says to judge, it says to judge is, it said judge is a form, is to form an opinion or a conclusion about something. To form an opinion or a conclusion about something is what is defined as to judge. And it says here, no one can judge. So it's saying no one can form an opinion or a conclusion about something with partial evidence. So here we're going to start off, introducing this idea of judge or judgment. And so it says no one can judge on partial evidence. Why? Because their judgment will be what? Inaccurate or incomplete. In other words, for true judgment to take place, there has to be what? Not partial evidence, but complete evidence. In other words, we have to know all the facts. In the world, there's, we have a whole judiciary system, and this judiciary system, their job is to render to render an opinion or a conclusion based on what the evidence or the facts. And so, in our system of judiciary, there's what we call one comes before a judge, and if there's a case and there's a trial, and so there's jurors, there's a judge, and there's those that are one that's being judged, and there's one that represents the one that's being judged, and then there's one that represents the state who may be bringing some type of judgment or against the one that's being judged. And so then there's evidence that's produced. And sometimes, and what we say is that, everyone is innocent to prove guilty, and the guilt or innocence comes through the evidence that's presented. But here, and that's our system of government, that's our system of judiciary, which we know that it is, a long way. It has a long way to go to be what? To be a system of equal, fair, and complete judgment. But here we're saying that no one can judge on partial evidence. That is not judgment. It is merely an opinion based on ignorance and doubt. Why? Because it's not complete evidence. All the information is not known. And here, as we get into this conversation is about the judgments that we make about ourselves or about others. Not based on complete information, but it's based on opinions that are based on ignorance and doubt. And that word ignorant is not a bad word. It means that we don't have all the information, and you cannot make a righteous, fair judgment without all the information, all the evidence. But we do that. We judge ourselves, and we judge each other only based on the evidence that the world shows us, only based on the evidence that our 5 physical senses show us, which is still incomplete knowledge. But we will make a judgment, we will render a judgment and not have all the evidence. And so it's not really a judgment. It's just an opinion based on what? based on ignorance and based on doubt. And the reason that there's ignorance because we don't have all the information, and based on doubt, and there's doubt, that's because we know we don't have all the information. We even doubt our own judgments. And so it says, its seeming certainty is but a cloak for the uncertainty that it would conceal. So the seeming certainty we have about our opinions and about our conclusions, it says here that it is just a cover-up for the uncertainty that it would conceal. So many times we form opinions and we're quick to do that. Or we make a conclusion about something and we're quick to do that when we don't have all the information. In fact, we do it all the time. It's almost like a natural instinct that we feel like we have to form an opinion about everything that happens in the world or everything that happens in someone's life. And in this 21st century that we're in, whereby the world has become this open glass house where all of us have access to the entire world almost instantly through technology, where all of us have even portals by which we can express our opinion immediately about any issue that may come up on a local or national or international basis. We have that, we have those resources at our disposal now. And from an egoic point of view, we are very opinionated and we're quick to draw conclusions. And it's based on, here what it's saying is, it's based on partial evidence. And so our judgments is not accurate. Our judgments are not complete. And the course here says that it's merely our opinions based on ignorance and doubt. And that it only covers up the uncertainty that we hold within ourselves. And so it said it needs irrational, because it's incomplete. It said it needs irrational defense because it is irrational. So many of our judgments are very irrational. And so we defend them with irrational defense because they are irrational. They're not whole and complete opinions. They're not whole and complete conclusions. And its defense seems strong. We build defense to support our opinions, which are covering up our own uncertainties. I like the course because it gets right down to the nitty-gritty. This is what we do. We do this consciously, but we're being driven unconsciously by our own opinion of ourselves, by our own self-view, by our own sense of sin, guilt, and fear. A lot of time, that's where these opinions and conclusions are coming from. Not from complete evidence, not from the truth, but from a place of where our belief system is not true. Our belief system, which has been formulated based on the idea of separation, is at the root of these partial evidence judgments that we render, which are merely opinions based on ignorance and doubt, which seems like they're certain, but they're actually covering up uncertainty within our own self. They need rational defense because they are irrational conclusions. Our defense seems strong. Our opinions and conclusions seem very strong. I mean, we can be very convincing at times. They seem convincing and without doubt because of all the doubting that is underneath. It says, so here the course says underneath the judgment of man, which, you know, the human man, the human species fall way short of having all the information. And so it's saying when we are quick to judge, it says that is because there is a tremendous amount of doubting underneath our judgments. And so it's almost like we're trying to conceal something about our own beliefs. It's what it says here. Now we can understand why the scripture says, and why the rabbi, the teacher of God, Jesus said, "Judge not, that you be not judged." Now we see why he said that. He said, why? Because you don't have all the information. You only have partial evidence based on what the body's eyes can see, based on maybe your history, or based on your emotional state in the moment, or based on your prejudgments, or based on, you know, your conditionings. He said, absolutely do not judge. Now I see why. He said, because with the same judgment that we use to judge others, he said we're using it to judge ourselves. Why? Because he's talking from a place of oneness, that you and your brother are the same. You can only judge how based on our place or our point of view. And if our point of view is based on separation and not based on that which is God or creation or reality or truth, he says our judgment is being rendered back to us. And so it says, you do not seem to doubt the world that you see. In other words, our judgments are based on what is being communicated to us through the world, what our body's eyes see, what the world has taught us. It says we do not seem to doubt the world that we see, because what we make our judgments based on that. In other words, we trust the world. It says you do not really question what is shown you through the body's eyes. When we make judgments based on the body's eyes, that means the body's ears, the body's nose, the body's mouth. In other words, our connection to the physical world is not a complete. It's not a complete and whole experience. It doesn't provide us with all the information. It's not a representation. In many cases, the world is not a representation of the truth, because what the world is communicating to us mostly is that which is what incomplete, that which is what not real, that which is illusionary. You know, they say your eyes can fool you, your ears can fool you, your nose can fool you. And that's true in the sense that it is not complete, accurate information. It's not whole information. We don't know all the backstory. We don't know all the people involved. We don't know all of the deception involved. We don't know all the truth involved. We don't understand all the scenarios that are surrounding the situation. There's no way naturally that we can know the complete story of another's life or situation or circumstance or condition. There's no way for us to know it all. But there is one that knows it all. That is a part and a partial of it. That is a part of us. Knows it all in the sense that Holy Spirit, as many religious references refer to as the Holy Spirit, that which knows all, or God that knows all things, okay? in that mind of God that knows all things. That when we surrender ourselves to that which knows all things, and allow that which knows all things to choose for us, to represent us, to speak for us, to be our choice. Now we are allowing that which can be what we would call whole and complete and righteous judgment can take its rightful place. And so it says that we do not question what is shown us through the body's eye, nor do we ask why we believe what the body's eyes show us. Even though we learned a long while since our senses can deceive us. We already know that the 5 physical senses can deceive us. We've all had that experience where we made judgments based on what we saw, what we heard, what we smelled, what we taste, touched, what we thought, only to what? Not have all the information, only to what? Have made a wrong judgment. We've all had that experience. All of us. We're still having that experience. But it says that you believe them to the last detail, and that we would believe every detail which they report is even stranger. When we pause to recollect how frequently they have been faulty witnesses indeed. So all of us have had experiences where the partial evidence that we've had based on the body's eyes, the body's senses, we've all had experiences where we've made a judgment. We come to a conclusion or an opinion that we found later that was incorrect. Why? Because we did not have all the information. We only had the partial evidence. Are y'all getting me here? It says, why would we trust these faulty witnesses so implicitly? Why would we trust in them? We're most of us become highly developed in our sensual self, and we don't develop our spiritual self. And so we depend highly on our sensual self to be our guide, or to be the means by which we make opinions or form conclusions. It's only because we've highly developed these faculties, and we're left the faculty of our spirituality, of our awareness, of our consciousness. We've left those faculties undeveloped. In other words, we don't depend on them. We don't use their capacities to help us. In this thing called life. But that's one reason that we're going through this 365 days lesson. What we're doing is what? We are building, we are expanding our awareness, expanding our consciousness, expanding our spirituality. We are advancing spiritually. Spiritually means what? That which is the original source, that which is the unseen source, that which is what? That which is eternal, that which is what? The truth, that which is unchanging, that which is unaltered, that which is reality. We don't develop ourselves in spirituality. We don't develop ourselves in reality. We become highly developed in the things that the world would teach us based on its point of view, which is based on separation. Thus, we have the world we see here in 2022. I mean, if you look back on the month of June and all the things that happened nationally, internationally, globally, And there are many. It was one of the most active months in history where things just went so much more in a state of division and separation. Everybody running to their own corner and drawing their guns. Though everybody doing the power grab, and those that have grabbed the power, they're trying to make the world one way. So we see all that happening. I mean, that's going to happen in the world, because that's the only thing the world knows. The world is not trying to develop its spiritual growth, its spiritual awareness, not trying to expand its spiritual awareness. It's trying to it is trying to promote separation as much as it can, to create division. And so it said, why would you trust these faculties so implicitly? Why? But because of, and it tells us why here. It says, because of underlying doubt, which we would hide with show of certainty. Because we really have doubt about we have doubt about this world. There is an underlying feeling, in a sense, that something is not right. There's an underlying feeling, in a sense, that there is a truth that I'm not aware of. There's something going on here. And that is true. And so it says, how can you judge? It says no one can judge on partial evidence. And here now it asks the question, how can you judge? It says your judgment rests upon the witness that your senses offer you. Your judgment rests upon the witness that your senses offer you. So how can you judge? It says, yet witness never falser was then this. The witnesses that we're using for our judgment, here is saying they're never as false as they are right now. But how else do you judge the world you see? Is there another alternative other than using our sensual self, using our bodily vision, using our conditioning of the world, using our beliefs in separation, using our doubts, using our fears? He said, is there another way to judge? Because this judgment, these opinions, and these conclusions that we have come to have not put us in a place of peace. So is there righteous judgment available? That's the question that's being asked. And it says, it says that we place pathetic faith. We place our trust. He calls it pathetic faith or pathetic trust. We place our pathetic trust in what our eyes and our ears report to us. And the eyes are very active and the ears are even more active. We're hearing all kinds of things and we're seeing all kinds of things. Again, because here in 2022, in this technologically driven world, where the world has been made so transparent because of technology and the communications that goes on 24 hours a day, where our ears are open, our eyes are open. It looks like this. It looks like this. Yes. Where we're always looking to see or to hear some news, something, what's going on around the world. And then we formulate opinions based on what? Partial evidence. We don't even, we trust the sources. If certain people say things, we trust it. Let some new fashion trend comes out and what? Got to jump on the bandwagon. It says our pathetic trust. It says our pathetic trust in what our eyes and our ears report to us. So if our trust is based on what our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, our touch is reporting to us, if that is the basis for our judgments, if that is the basis for formulating opinions and coming to conclusions, he said that's pathetic. We're pathetic. And that's true. It says, we think that our fingers touch reality. See? We think that our fingers touch reality. It says, and close upon the truth. It says, and here's the conclusion of all of this. When we have trust, when we trust our sensual self to judge accurately or even to judge at all, when we've been instructed by the wisest guru that ever lived to judge not, that you be not judged. In other words, don't come to a conclusion. Don't come to an opinion just based on partial evidence. That's not judgment. That is not judgment. It's just an opinion based on what? Ignorance and doubt. So we're being ignorant and doubtful when we do that. We are being ignorant and doubtful when we practice that type of response to what our ears hear and our eyes see. I'll accept that because I've been a victim of taking partial evidence and making wrong judgments many times. And in this world of communication, it's almost like the world is forcing you to make a judgment on everything. But here the Course is saying that is ignorance, and that's doubtful. So it says to conclude all of this, it says this awareness or this lack of awareness, or it says, or this level of awareness that we understand. This is just a level of awareness that we understand. It says, and think more real than what its witnesses. Let me say this correctly. It says to conclude of what I've just said about judgment, about our doubts, about our ignorance, about our uncertainty, about our irrational practices, about our underlying doubt. What I've just said about the body's eyes, the body's ears, about how we know our senses can deceive us. What I've just said about us believing all the details. It's very strange that how we trust so implicitly in this. And what I've said about the underlying doubt that hides certainty. And that all of this are witnesses. All these witnesses in most cases are false witnesses. And how pathetic our trust is in our eyes and our ears and what they report to us. So he concludes all this by saying, this is a awareness that we understand. This is our present level of awareness. This is our present conscious level of spirituality. Is it mature or is it immature? Is it childish or is it a mature state of being, a state of awareness, a state of consciousness? Of course, we concluded that it's an immature or elementary state of consciousness or awareness. It says it right here. It says this is an awareness that we understand at this point. It says, and think more real. We think that this is more real than what is witnessed to by the eternal voice for God himself. In other words, we place more trust in what our senses tell us than what the witness, the inner witness that's within all of us, the eternal voice that is within all of us, which is God himself, that is within all of us. So in other words, we've placed our confidence, we've placed our trust in our limited self, our limited faculties. And we have developed it highly and advanced them highly, only to produce a world and a place and a life that is not fulfilling, that is not content, that is not happy, in lieu of the voice for God that is within all of us, the voice of truth. He's saying here, it's saying here that there is a voice, that there's a representation that is a part of us, that's in our very nature, that wants to communicate to us a more complete vision, a more complete version, more complete evidence of what reality is, of who we are, of what life purpose is, of what the purpose of the world is, of what the plan is. In other words, there is a self that we are, that includes God, that is there with all the infinite intelligence that there is, ready to give us what? Insight and guidance on everything in life. Everything, excluding nothing. Remember, our lesson today is all things are echoes of the voice for God. In other words, everything that happens in life, within them, there is a communication that can be what? Gleaned from everything that happens, that everything that is, that the part of us that is our God self has the ability to make sense of all of that for us, so that we can what? Be at peace. So that we can what? Not be ignorant, not be doubtful. So we can what? So we can have accurate knowledge. So we can have understanding. So that we can be at peace. So that we don't judge wrongly. So that we become a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. It says that what? There is this voice for God that resides in all of us. In other words, we all have our own internal teacher, our own internal judge who knows all things. That's what this whole training has been pointing us to our own reality with God, which is whole and complete and innocent and guiltless and sinless and eternal and without limits. So this whole 151 days we've been engaged is about eventually us coming to become more familiar and more trusting of the inner witness, the inner guide, the inner voice, our true self. That knows all things. Versus relying on our sensual self, instead of relying on all of the messages that the world sends us. To move us from a place of doubt to a place of what? Certainty. What the ego communicates to us is uncertainty and doubt. That voice that we have become so familiar with, that we think is the voice for God, when it speaks of separation and guilt and sin and judgment and death and lack and scarcity, causes us to look and see others in a way that is not true. Causes us to look and see the world in a way that the world is not true. There is this voice within us. There is this reality within us, which we call our true self. The Course calls it what? The real you. The Course calls it what? Your reality. It calls it what? Your Christ self, or Christ vision, or what? True perception. So it's a matter of training and discipline to where we no longer listen to the voice of the ego that would judge with partial evidence. Listen to the voice of the ego that is uncertain and full of doubt. Listen to the voice of the ego that would have us to trust what? Our body's eyes, and accept the reports that comes through what we hear and what we see. So this is about expanding our awareness. This is about expanding our consciousness and realizing that we are joined with that which is whole and complete, that which is true, that which is reality. And it comes through the recognition it comes through making a decision to sit quietly. It comes through a recognition and an attention to hear the voice that speaks what? For God only. And it's your own voice. It's your own true self that's waiting and ready, has been waiting and ready all your life, and has been speaking all your life. In the silent moments, in between the thoughts, in between the words, in between the pain and the sorrow, in between all the misunderstanding, that voice has been speaking to us. And now we have readied ourselves. We have spent 151 days readying ourselves, preparing ourselves, become so laser focused. We've been preparing the mind. We've been bringing ideas to the mind, so the mind could finally settle down. The mind can finally find a quiet place where the mind can finally become this landing place, this place of grace, where truth can have a place to rest. We have finally quieted down the mind long enough, or to the degree that now we can finally begin to hear, like it says, echoes of the voice of God. We can. Remember, in the last review session, we said our mind holds only what it thinks with God. How could we say that and really have some sense of, oh, I understand that? We couldn't do that 151 days ago. But after 151 days of mind training, after 151 days of thought reversal, after 151 days of examining our perception, after 151 days of allowing the truth that transformed to begin to do its work, to bring the prodigal son home, to bring the mind that was a runaway child running wild back into a place of peace, where we have created this no judgment zone, where we have created this space of innocence, of wholeness, of oneness, of completeness. After for 131 days, we have spoken to you about your true reality as being one with God, as being sinless and guiltless. We have spoken to you for 151 days about the truth of who you really are. Now we have prepared that space where there's a desire. We have created an appetite and a desire to sit quietly and commune with our reality, to sit quietly and meditate on these realities. It's been one day after another, one step after another, where we have identified our ego self and how we have developed and built that ego self, and how we have allowed that to become our image or our concept of ourself, which is a false concept. How we have allowed the ego thought system to create this body identification that has only brought about pain and suffering. 151 days we've done this. And if this is your first day listening in, just stick with us. Like we've said before, in all of these lessons are all the lessons. Because there is but the one lesson. Ultimately, we'll get to that. There's but the one lesson, and that's in all of the lessons. And that is that we're all innocent, that we're all guiltless. And in our innocence is our salvation, which is guaranteed by God. That message is it has been placed in all 151 of our lessons. And that we are these sinless and guiltless creations of God that has never changed. We remain as God created us. All that the world has done to present us with false appearances, all that the world has taught us and conditioned us to believe that we're something that we're not. We have come to understand that that's only an illusion, that we've only imprisoned ourselves, that we've only done it to ourselves, that the world and the condition that we see it in is only done it to itself. But even in all of that, here it says, all things are echoes of the voice for God. In other words, in everything that has been made, even by humanity, based on a false belief, based on a point of view that is not accurate, God is within all of it. Knowing how to now translate and represent it in such a manner to wake us all up, to bring us all to a point of awakening, a point of discovery, a point of enlightenment. It's in everything, every form. It may have been made for an intention to further the lie, but God knows how to take it and retranslate it, reconfigure it to teach us the truth that is true always. Just look at what's going on in our world. It seems out of whack on every level. But what's really happening on every level is that the voice that speaks for God, what's happening in every arena, whether it be political, whether it be business, whether it be our religious communities, our entertainment communities, whether it be our social communities, our health communities, it doesn't matter. Whatever arena in life that seems out of sort. You look at our governments, you look at our relationships on a one-on-one basis, what's happening within families, what's happening within communities. If you look at what's happening within states and between states here on this Independent Day. It looks like everything is going in the wrong direction. Even in this seemingly out of whack, out of control state of being that the world's in, that the truth and the voice for truth is in all of it. Taking the mistakes, taking the errors, taking the judgments, taking the wrong decisions that we're making. And through the wisdom that only comes from God, there is a working or underworking that is happening to bring about the purposes of God, which is oneness. That's why you don't have to fret. That's why you don't have to be anxious or overly concerned about. It appears that love has lost its luster. It has lost its value. It looks like the truth and equality and fairness and goodness has lost its appeal. It doesn't matter what's really going on. In the ultimate is that the purposes of God will prevail. When it looks like the bad is going to succeed, when it looks like hatred and vitriol, when it looks like inequality, when it looks like prejudices, when it looks like supremacy is going to run love out of town, off the planet. It might look that way and that's what it looks that way to the sensual self. But what's really going on is the purposes of God shall prevail in all of this. Reality shall prevail in all of this. When it looks like, that which is wrong is going to get, to rule and to reign and to suppress. It might look that way. But look not at the things that are seen, but the things that are not seen. And what is the thing that is not seen? It's not seen with the natural eye, or it's not heard with the natural ear. But the plans of God and God's purposes are even being worked out within what it appears to be a losing battle. Just wait and see. Just chill. Be about your business of expanding your consciousness, expanding your awareness to the truth that is true always, embracing your true reality, understanding what the will of God is. To understand that only the purposes of God will prevail. Many are the plans that are in humanity's heart that he's received from the ego thought system. But only and absolutely only the purposes of God that shall prevail in life. He guarantees it. We just can't freak out when it looks differently. This is part of our spiritual awareness. This is part of our spiritual our advanced growth in spirituality. This is about lessons that we're learning. This is about where we're coming to trust in God and God only. Trust in truth and truth only. Do not think that the lie shall prevail. It will not. Don't think that the world's going to get overrun by evil. It was not. Trust in God with all your heart. And lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge God, and God will direct your path. You will begin to hear the voices. you will begin to hear the echoes of truth, the echoes that will begin to pervade every arena of life. I haven't even got started on this lesson like we need to. There's so much more in here that we need to share. And I'm going to take my time and share it. So I'm going to stop right there for today, but we're going to finish workbook lesson 151. All things are echoes of the voice for God. All things. Here on this day in the United States, where they call it the Independence Day, the day that they celebrate liberty and freedom, let it be a reminder. Let this day, let this moment serve as a reminder that who the Son sets free is free indeed. Freedom comes from the knowing of yourself. Freedom comes from that which is free in and of itself. And that is reality. So let this day serve as a reminder that only the purposes of God shall prevail. Why? Because there's God and there's nothing else. And all the else that we experience, and see and hear and taste and touch and tell, smell, all of the activities of life, all the events of life, all of the history that's been laid out. None of it means nothing without being aligned with the purposes of God. You can bank on it. You can base your entire life on that. And so as we continue in this workbook lesson 151, we are going to learn that there is love beyond the hate. That there is constancy in the change that we see. There is something constant in the change that we see. That there's really only purity, even in what they call sin. Even in sin, what we have defined as sin, there's purity. And only heaven's blessings are being bestowed upon the whole world. Only heaven's blessings. And such is what the Course calls the resurrection, or the transfiguration, or the enlightenment, or the awakening, or salvation. So stay with me. We'll be back on tomorrow, and we'll finish this up. But I think that's enough for this day. Have a great day. And remember, God is in everything. The truth is in everything. And it echoes a voice. We have to attune our ear, not the physical ear, but the ear of the Spirit, the eyes of the Spirit. We have to attune ourselves. We have to grow and advance so that we can hear the voice that speaks for God only. Not out there, but within us. The righteous judge. Have a great day. We'll see you on tomorrow. Bye-bye.